Okay, we're in Tanya on page 86 in the top, 156 at the bottom. We're going to start 5 lines in the top of the page. I don't think we learned this yesterday because we didn't learn Tanya for a few. Well, last week we did. Okay, in Perek Lamed Daled, the Alter Rebbe was explaining the way a person, when he does a mitzvah, becomes completely a chariot of Hashem. He becomes bottled to Hashem. He says, even though I can't understand it, I'm not capable of understanding the greatness of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu. Nevertheless, when I do what I need to do, I do mitzvahs, I study Torah, I become God's host, meaning God comes to my house and he lives, or my body, and he lives with me, and he's dwelling within me. So that's the causing the simcha that the person has to have. Then he says like this: 5 lines in the top of 86, at the bottom it's 156. If a person will have a broader knowledge, broader mind, as it says in the pasuk, to her Yadayim Yosef Emetz, Yosef Emetz, the pure, okay, the person with pure hands will add strength. To her Yadayim, a person with pure hands will add strength. Umachshava Teva, and a good deed, he says like this. Without the Rebbe saying over here, the way the Rebbe explains it is very simple. A person has an obligation to learn, like he said before. Some people have to learn a little bit in the morning, a little bit at night. Every person has to learn a little bit in the morning, a little bit at night. He says, and then when you do that, because that's what Torah tells you you have to learn, so you're fulfilling your obligation. So therefore, when you do it, you're fulfilling the obligation, you become Homa for Hashem. Then he says like this: if a person is limited in learning time, but he makes up in his mind that, you know, if I get more time, I'm going to learn more. He's not able to yet. But the person says, and the person will think in his heart like this, that if he has had more time to learn, and a good deed, Hashem considers as if you did it. So he's saying even more. Even if you're only limited in the amount that you're able to learn. But the fact that you want to learn more if you have the opportunity, Hashem considers it to a certain respect, to a certain level, as if you can learn more, because that is what you really want. You just forced that you're not able to. And then he says like this: the Gam, and here the Alter Rebbe says a remarkable thing. The Gam Shara Yem Kulei, the same thing the rest of the day. And when a person's not davening, until now, the Alter Rebbe said, you daven, you learn, you know, you're connecting to Hashem, you are the dwelling place of Hashem. Now he says even more. Even when you're in business, it could also be the business, could be a dwelling place for Hashem. How? When he gives tzedakah. I'm going to read a few lines and I'm going to explain this whole thing properly. I'll try to at least. That he gives from his effort. He worked. He's working to make a living. And then he's giving tzedakah, which is one of the attributes of Hashem, to be kind, to give tzedakah. Mahu rachum. Like the Gemara says, just like Hashem is merciful, you should be merciful. So he says like this. And let me just preface it with another fundamental thing Chassidus explains. People are of the opinion, even religious people, really. Many of them, if you don't know Chassidus, many people think, okay, when I daven, when I learn, when I do mitzvahs, I'm serving Hashem. But that's it. When I do business, I'm not serving Hashem. When I eat and sleep, I'm not serving Hashem. When I go to the gym to be healthy, not to worship my body, but to be healthy, I'm not serving Hashem. Comes along, it's really a pasuk. In all your ways, you should know Hashem. The Mishnah says, Kol masecha, and pick your others, l'shem shemayim. All your actions should be for the sake of heaven. Here now, the Rebbe is coming up with this point that if a person does business, and obviously he does it honestly, he doesn't cheat, he doesn't lie, because then obviously your business is not a vessel for Hashem. If you don't keep Shabbos in the business and you don't, daven because of whatever, we're not talking about that. Talking about a person who keeps business properly, halachically. But now his intent of the business is to serve Hashem. Meaning, why am I in business? Because I want to give tzedakah. I want to raise a family according to Torah mitzvahs. Based on what the Rebbe said earlier in Tanya about eating, if a person eats for the right purposes, the Rebbe said before in Tanya, it's like ka'ola u'kakarban. It's like the highest level of a sacrifice, which is the burnt offering. Even though you're eating and drinking, but you're not eating and drinking like an animal. You're eating and drinking besides making a bracha and besides the fact that it's kosher. But you're eating to be healthy, to be able to serve Hashem, not because I want to press at the food and guzzle the liquid. Like we said many times, there are people that eat to live, and there are people that live to eat. A person who lives to eat is not serving Hashem when they eat, because their whole life is eat. If a person eats to live, then the eating itself is serving Hashem. And the Rebbe said many times, based on Chassidus, in fact, it could be even a greater level than a mitzvah. Because a mitzvah is taking objects that Hashem said to utilize as a mitzvah. When a person does business, like he says, his intention is to give tzedakah. His intention is to raise a family, to pay tuition, and to do whatever it needs to be done. At that time, the person is elevating not only things that Hashem designated for a mitzvah, even worldly things, which is a much greater accomplishment. So first, Alter Rebbe says the simcha of a person should be when he's davening and learning, and therefore he becomes God's mishkan, God's home, and he's completely nullified and subjugated and bottled in a merkava to Hashem. He says, even when you're in business, it says, if you do it because Hashem is kind, I also want to be kind. Like it says in the Zohar, Chesed d'royo yemina. Chesed is the right hand of Hashem. Those that say Pasach Elion, that's what Tikkunim is. Tikkunim is Pasach Elion. Chesed d'royo yemina, gvur d'royo simol. Chesed is God's right hand. Now, what does it mean? Chesed is God's right hand. God doesn't have a hand. So what do you mean? Chesed is the right hand, Gvura is severity, is the left hand of Hashem. So the Tzemach Tzedek and Derech Mitzvah explains that there's two interpretations why Chesed Raya Yemina. Number one is the right hand versus the left hand. Right hand symbolizes giving, generosity, chesed, kindness. Left hand refers to punishment and things like that. Chesed raya yamina. What does it mean? Chesed raya yamina means when a person does chesed, that's the similar concept of God doing chesed. God doesn't have a hand that does chesed. But Hashem, just like by a person, the right hand symbolizes act of goodness and kindness. So therefore, chesed raya yamina, meaning what is Hashem's right hand, so to speak? How does Hashem spiritually do chesed? It's the concept of a right hand. And then the Tzemach says explains the second reason. Why is chesed the right hand of Hashem? Because the spiritual source of a human being's right hand, its physical right hand. But when you put it in spiritual, up, what's the spiritual source of a person's right hand that becomes physical? Chesed of Atzilus. Chesed of Atzilus, when it comes down through Atzilus, into Bria, into Yetzira, into Asiya, comes through the channel of the four worlds. It comes into a Gashmistic world, then it becomes a right hand. So he says here like this. Like it says, chesed ru yamina. So therefore, when a person with the act of their hand does an act of kindness, they are connecting to the chesed of Atzilus. At the moment the hand gives tzedakah in the pushka, Dr. Rebbe is saying over here, the hand becomes a merkava, like Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov. They were a merkava. The hand, when you do a chesed, you do somebody a favor. You give tzedakah, whatever it may be. Because you have tzedakah with your money, with your body, with your soul. It could be any type of tzedakah. When you give tzedakah, you are becoming bottled to chesed of Atzilus, the highest level of chesed. Just like Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, by the way. The difference is, by us a minute later, we could do something wrong with the hand. And Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov were 24/7, 365 days a year, 180, 75, whatever they lived, was continuous. And he says, even though you're only giving 20%, which is the ideal amount of tzedakah to give is 20%, he says, so you're not giving, there's 80% you're not giving. How do you elevate all that 80% if I'm only giving 20% to tzedakah? The Alter Rebbe says, when you give the fifth, it elevates together with it. The other 80%, the other 80%, la Hashem to Hashem, the Yismochin, the Shifta Yisbarach, to be a dwelling place for Hashem. Meaning what the Alter Rebbe is saying like this. When I give tzedakah, let's say 10%, 20%, whatever it is, and the Alter Rebbe is saying 20%. When a person gives 20% tzedakah, they're elevating not only, let's say out of $100, they're giving 20. Not only are they elevating the $20, they're elevating all 100 through the 20. So all the money is becoming elevated. Not only the $20 you're giving, everything becomes elevated. Which means, and he says, like it says, the Gemara says, mitzvah tzedakah shkula keneged kol hakabbanos. The mitzvah of tzedakah, when you give tzedakah, is like you brought all the sacrifices. By the way, I must comment over here. That doesn't mean you give a penny to tzedakah, it's like you brought all the korbanos. Okay? It means as follows. There's a din by korbanos. There's certain korbanos, a rich man had to give certain type, a poor man had to give certain type, and the guys in between. Like a rich man had to give an animal, middle class was able to give a bird, poor people gave flower offerings. Okay? But it says, if the rich man gave the poor man sacrifice, he didn't bring the carbon. He didn't fulfill his obligation. If a poor man gave a rich man's carbon, he did. So if a guy should be giving $100 and he gives $20, no, then he didn't give tzedakah properly. He didn't elevate all the money. But here he says like this, tzedakah is equal to all the sacrifices. So what's the connection to sacrifices? So now the Rebbe says, the karbanis, let me explain this outside first. It says, the Rebbe is saying over here like this. When a person brought a korban, there was inanimate, plant, animal, and human. Okay? You brought wine offerings, which is inanimate. You brought flower offerings, which was plant. You brought the animal, which is animal, and then you have the person that brought it, that brought all of them. So it says in Kabbalah that when a person brought a korban, not only did they elevate that particular animal or bird or flower offering, what they brought, and most korbanos had all four, by the way. It had inanimate and plant and animal and the person bringing it. Because most korbanos had flower offerings with it and libations with it and so on. So what happens is the person, when he brings his korban, elevates all the animals that exist in the world. The flower offering that a person brought elevated all the flower offerings that a person that existed in the world. So now the Rebbe is saying when somebody gives 20%, it's not only that he's elevating that 20%, because the Gemara likens tzedakah to karbanos. And what happened by a karban? Everything in the world became elevated by the person bringing their karban. Inanimate, plant, animal, and human. And he says, V'chol hatzemeach, and all the plant life became elevated. Mixed in oil, which is again inanimate object. So therefore he says like this. How does the person get simcha? Okay, this Lamedalit is talking now about simcha. A person realized, they learn in the daven, Hashem removes himself from everywhere else in the world and comes to you. And you become a merkava like Avraham Yitzchak. Then he says, when you're doing business and your intent of doing business is to give tzedakah, and not only that, like we said, in addition to that, to raise a family properly, to be able to raise children, to pay education and all that. Now the Rebbe says, not only are you elevating that particular thing you brought, you're elevating all the money that you have. All the money that you have is elevated through that amount that you gave tzedakah. Why? Just like animals, you brought an animal, elevated all the animals in the world. An interesting story, a guy who was very wealthy came to the Rebbe and he said, Rebbe, I want to retire because I don't need any more money. I have enough money to live. The Rebbe was against retirement anyway, and very much anti-retirement. But so the guy came to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, I want to retire because I don't need any money. So the Rebbe, in his classic immediate response, said to the guy, go back to work because I need your money. You're going to go work, you're going to make money, give that money to tzedakah. We need your money to fit tzedakah. You're not going to make money, you have enough money to live. You don't need it, but I need money for tzedakah, to give whatever needs to be done with tzedakah money. And then he says like this, and not only that, he says like this, more than that. When a person learns and davens, he elevates to Hashem, everything he ate and drank, and he enjoyed, may arba yodis from the other 80% that he didn't give tzedakah. In other words, Al Rebbe said like this: a person works, okay, he gives 20% tzedakah. That 20%, Al Rebbe says, number one, elevates all the other $80, okay, the other 80%. But in addition to that, Al Rebbe says, when you bought food with that money, not tzedakah, the other money, you bought food, you ate and you drank and you slept and you bought beds, and now you're able to daven and learn and do with the strength that you had. So that 80% is anyway becoming elevated directly, not only through the 20%. Now you're elevating all that money in a much higher level, that money becomes a mamish part of kedusha. And he says, okay, so now he says, this is why a person needs to be happy. You need to have simcha. Why? Because you look, even though he said before, you are supposed to think you're a nothing, chop you up, the wood, it's too thick for godliness. You have to bust yourself up, say you're no good and you're far from Hashem. And he says at the same time, you need to have simcha. Your neshama is in Golus, and we're very far away from Hashem, and we are so minute, and Hashem is so infinite, so there's absolutely no connection. Yet he says you need to have simcha. Why? Because you do a mitzvah, or you do business, or you eat and sleep, and you do everything correctly the way Hashem wants us to do. You're connected. And he says, isn't that contradictory? Isn't simcha contradictory to what he said before, to be meridus, to be saddened? Sadness and happiness don't coexist. He says like this: now, all the simcha that the nefesh has, ein mehem meniah, will still not be a withholding, lias nivze be'emas nimas, to be despicable in her own eyes, v'lev nishbar, and to have a broken heart, v'ruach nemucha, and a low spirit, v'shasa simcha mamish, at the time of simcha. Now, the Rebbe is saying over here, a person has the ability, he's going to explain, he's not going to explain why, but he's going to explain what the source of it is. Now, the Rebbe says a person is able to have simcha and meriris coexisting at the same time. There's a pasuk in Tehillim, the Gilu Bir'ada. They will rejoice with trembling. The Gilu Bir'ada. They'll rejoice with trembling. How do you have that? So now the Rebbe says, why is it? Because he says, this, that the person is despicable in his own eyes. Like he said, he feels far away from Hashem. That's mitzad aguf v'nefesh habat. That's because of the body and the animal soul. B'simcha, and when a person is simcha, that's mitzad nefesh olikis from the godly soul. V'nitzus elokus and the godly spark, hamlubish balachiyesa, which is in the person to keep him alive. Okay, so now and then let's just finish the last sentence and then we'll explain it. And this is what it says in the Zohar. Crying is ingrained in the heart, is lodged in the heart on one side. And joy is lodged in the other. So the Zohar says you can coexist. And the Alter Rebbe is saying why. One comes in the body and one comes from the neshama. The simcha is the relationship when a person does Torah, mitzvah, business, whatever it may be, like he said, that you connect to Hashem. That's the neshama connecting to Hashem. The mevirus, the bitterness of the distance from Hashem, he said that comes from the body. How does it work? The contradictory. So the explanation is as follows. You can have, and we learned this the similar concept in many different places. And that is like this. When opposite things work together for one goal, and they're both bottled, subjugated, devoted, dedicated to the cause, that conflicting things don't contradict one another. To give you a few examples that we always learned many times. Beauty of art cannot be from one color. You can't make beautiful art with one color. Art is when you blend together different colors, many of them contrasting to one another, opposite colors. Yet, when they blend together in harmony for a cause, to create a beautiful picture, then the black is not black, and the white is not white, and the red is not red. It's all bottled and becoming part of the one picture. You have that in music, with a symphony, you have different things. And then you have that even in the human body. In the human body, you have the head and the heart. Let's give you an example. Mamish opposites. The head is cold, the brain, physically, the brain is cold. Physically, the heart is warm. One is feelings, one is the intellect, the contradictory things from head to toe. Okay? Yet, they coexist simultaneously because their function is to have a healthy person. And in order to have a healthy person, the head does its function, the heart does its function, and even though they're contradictory functions, but they don't feel it as me and me. They feel it as us. It's one body. Hashem wants that the body should serve Hashem. Hashem wants that the neshama should serve Hashem. He puts the neshama together and the body. He puts the neshama and the body together. Hashem says now, each one of you are functioning together to make a home for me. that should dwell in you. The personal base of Migdosh, the personal Mishkan that every Jew makes within themselves. Hashem said the body has one function, the neshama has a different function. What is the body's function? The neshama's function we know, to connect to Hashem, to serve Hashem, and so on. What is the body's function? The body's function is, by nature, is to help the neshama fulfill its mission. A neshama without a body can't do mitzvahs. You can't put on tefillin, you can't light Shabbos candles, you can't, nothing, you can't do anything. So what is the purpose of a body? Why did Hashem send down the neshama from Gan Eden into a body? In Gan Eden, there's no mitzvahs. So the body's purpose is to help the neshama do mitzvahs. Now, the only way the body can help the neshama do a mitzvah is when the body realizes my function here is not to have a good time and to enjoy life and to do whatever I want. The function of my body is to help the neshama do what it needs to do, to make a dwelling place for Hashem Minas. So the Alter Rebbe says it's not a contradiction to have joy and weeping or sadness, because the sadness is the body realizing what is my function, not to get in the way of the neshama. Not only not to get in the way, but to help the neshama do the mitzvah. And that can be by being so full of myself. And that is the distance and the meridus, the bitterness that the body has, because it really is, what is it? It's nothing of its own. It's only to help the neshama. The neshama's simcha is that it's able to do mitzvahs, is able to connect to Hashem. By Chassidim, there was an expression, we don't know how much we can help the Rebbe. But Chassidim used to say in Yiddish, the expression was only shkal yemachen. We daven, they daven, we shouldn't ruin it. We shouldn't get in the way. Sometimes you're trying to get things done. And somebody says, oh, let me help you. And you don't want the help. Okay, so what do? You tell, do me a favor. By you staying away, you're helping me. Like women always say that. By getting out of the kitchen, what did he tell the husbands? Don't mix into the cook. Get out of the kitchen. You want to help me? Get out of the kitchen. Huh? No, you don't say it. I say it. So what does it mean? Don't get in the way. The body's avodah is not to get in the way of the neshama. Not only not to get in the way, but actually to help the neshama. How does the body help the neshama? By allowing it to do Torah mitzvahs. But from the same side, simultaneously, he says at the same time, weeping and joy is at the same time. I remember when it was the Yom Kippur War. It came the Yom Kippur into Sukkot. And the Rebbe was demanding simcha. And the Yom Kippur War at the beginning wasn't going too well. And everybody was depressed. For those of you that were around then and remember, everybody was depressed because it wasn't going like the 6-day war went. Baruch Hashem, at the end were unbelievable miracles. And people were very depressed. And now it comes the Yom Tov Sukkot and some Chospeira and all, you got to do things. And the Rebbe was calling this thing the Gilu Beroda. The Rebbe said it's not a contradiction. You have to be serious of what's going on. At the same time, simcha is actually what's going to break the barriers. And the Rebbe demanded that people should have more simcha. And that's sukkahs than even a regular sukkahs. Because we need to undo the depression that really comes in the Yetzer Hara not to do things. And when you're depressed, you don't do things. And that's all from the Yetzer Hara. It could be a Chassidish Yetzer Hara. He said, get depressed because you're no good. And do bittul, work on the level of bittul and think how no good you are. Meanwhile, you don't do anything. So it's exactly what the Yetzer Hara wants. So the Alter Rebbe finishes up over here because now, the Alter Rebbe in Perek Lamed, which we're not starting today, but the Alter Rebbe in Perek Lamed starts explaining a new thing. Why in the world does a Beinoni's neshama come into the world if he'll never become a tzaddik? But until now, the Alter Rebbe explained the well level of simcha versus atzvus, and it's not a contradiction to have simultaneously. And Alter Rebbe said, "Why? How do you get to merirus? The log that's too thick, you got to chop it up that the fire catches. At the same time, you have to have simcha, but you could accomplish the fact that we're distant from Hashem allows us to accomplish much more." How can we get this clip right away when the share is over? I don't know. You have to ask the producers. The producers will tell you. I haven't the faintest idea. I know I just know how to press a few buttons, and that's all I know. Anyway, okay, everybody, that's it for now. Once again, the next 2 Wednesdays is no class. This coming Monday, there is a class, and the Monday after that, there is no class. So everybody have a great Shabbos. We'll see you Mitzvah Shem Monday night.